Hello and welcome back to Shulchan Aruch HaRav. We continue in Hilchos Betzias HaPas Siman Kuf Samach Ches. We pick it up with Sif Yud Beis in the middle of the subject of Pas Hababakistan. So far, we've discussed that the one opinion is it's like filled dough, like pastry type stuff that's filled with fruit or whatever. The second opinion was things like any dough that's made with not water as the liquid is or it's got lots of spices or something like that. The third opinion, some say this type of bread is it's kneaded with water in the dough. It's not actually filled with spices. It is not filled with anything. But it's made into small, thin cakes, which we might call crackers, and they're chewed only for their taste, but they're not really for satiation. In Yiddish, he calls them kichlach, which is some sort of a cracker, kichel or something like that. But it's not. It's made into a dry, crunchy cracker type thing. But in halacha, as far as halacha is, yesh lahaka b'divrei seifrim, that you should be makel in a rabbinic requirement, kedivrei kulam, according to all these opinions of what is pasab abakistan, v'fra b'savik brachas, and especially when we're not sure what a bracha is supposed to be, shaloi levarich birkas hamazon, dal brachas al mashal l'svara achas dai b'bracha achas mein gimel, and you should not be making the four brachas of benching, especially according to the opinion that you only need to make one bracha that's like three brachas, meaning like what we call al michya. So since we don't know for sure what any of these things are, it already falls into that suffix, and these in all of these cases, you're on crackers and cakes and cookies and all those things, you're going to make an al hamichya. You're going to make a mezonis and al micha. Ke'ein kan suffix shel Torah af im achal kedei svia. There's not even a suffix deraisa at all here. Even if you ate a bunch that would fill you up, shu chai birkas hamazon min which would obligate a person typically to say birkas hamazon deraisa sha'arei min Torah daila birkas achas mein gimel, because deraisa you could get away with one bracha that's like the three brachas. That is really the case over here in these situations. Since you only have to make one bracha that's like three, you have to only make al micha. You also don't make HaMotzi beforehand, because you can't have the brachas contradicting each other. And furthermore, when you make mine mizonis, that includes bread, real bread, mizonis, mazon, zan, hazan, right? That's all the same thing. Because bread is so chashuv on its own, we separate it into its own category, and give it its own special bracha. But b'di'evet, bayrei minim mizonis would be okay on bread. The kosher ein borer lanu, since we don't know what is exactly right to do here, sheish b'chashivas lechem gamor, that what does truly have the significance of bread or not, therefore, these kinds of doughs, you don't exclude them from what they typically would be considered, which is just regular old mazon, like any other kind of flour and water combination, which is, it's definitely mazon, and even though if you did make mazonis on something that is truly lechem, like your challah on Shabbos, which is real bread, you're not yaitze b'di'evet, so I was wrong about that a minute ago. You're not actually yaitze, because since the improvement of the flour and water into something called bread is an elevation, and it makes it better. Therefore, the bracha also has to be better. So therefore, you would not normally be yaitze mikol makom b'safek lechem gamor. In this case, where it's a suffix, that's why you would be yaitze yatza shesafik birchas al divrei lahaka, because we always go to the lenient side when we're not sure what bracha to make. Va'afilu chadchila ein kan chashash bracha latala, and even the chadchila, you can absolutely make a mezonis on these kinds of bread. It is not a bracha levatala. Shekiva shekilu chacham b'divreim latzei specific bracha, because once Chazal said you can be lenient in rabbinic requirements to be yaitze safek bracha, ein zu bracha she'en tzricha. It's not considered a bracha that's unnecessary. Ein levatala. It's not for naught. Bevadai. It's not for sure for naught. Kivin she'yaitze b'yedei chavasa, because you are fulfilling your obligation on whatever this kind of bread is. That's not real bread. Even though it looks like real bread, it's not real bread, like these dough things. And therefore you can eat by way of this mizonos. The end of noises Shem Shemaim Lashav below the sheker. We want to be careful, of course, to not ever say Hashem's name in vain or in falsehood. Hashem be'emes shabar mina mizonos. You're not doing that here because you're blessing Hashem truly for creating these different types of mizonos of food. Mizonos are food, different foods, and that are truly, satisfying. But not only that, these things are mazon. Not only that, if a person would not be yotze making this bracha, then it would be a bracha that's not necessary. And he's saying Hashem's name in vain. It would not be false. Even if you made a bracha on something that's not actually food at all, it's not a false bracha. You are praising Hashem for creating whatever the thing is that you said in your bracha, but that bracha is not necessary on that thing because it's a piece of stone or whatever. Anyone who is concerned for his soul and wants to be stringent on himself, in all these cases, make sure you eat enough to be considered a meal. If you don't know what the bracha is, except by the breads that are filled with liquids that are not water, or fruit juices, if they're filled with fruit juices or other liquids that are not water, and it's filled with fruits and honey and spice or whatever, those things they're not. You cannot make a suda on them. You should eat those in a suda that you washed for lemazon l'seivad, and you eat these as part of your meal, kamashis bar, as we mentioned before. So that's what he's saying at the end, that if don't eat less than a shear kaviyah suda, unless it's within a meal. If you're going to eat less than a shear, like you only want to have 1 or 2 cookies, that's not enough to satisfy you, eat those during a meal. Don't eat them separately if you want to be concerned if you're eating less than a shear, because maybe it's more than a shear, and you should be washing and making HaMotzi. These are all the sfeikas. Again, as we mentioned throughout this discussion, check with your local Orthodox rabbi. Have a great day.